Hey guys, Jason Smith here with Hugo Moto. When we decided to put together a high-performance front suspension kit for Harley-Davidson Sportster Scrambler conversion kit, we had three goals in mind. We wanted ultimate in performance, a reasonable price, ease of installation. When we started researching, trying to find someone who could supply that for us, there was no one in the market that really met all of those needs. Working through a number of our industry contacts, we were led to Max Macallister of Traxxion Dynamics, and we're really pleased with what Max has come up with and developed for us. So we're going to take a little time with Max to run through the kit that he has developed for us. And Max, why don't we get started by just showing us what's currently in a Harley-Davidson Sportster, the damper rod fork, how that works, and what you've done to address the shortcomings of this design.
Most damper rod forks you'll find are in a conventionally configured fork. So with a sliding lower leg and a chrome tube, this is the basic motorcycle suspension we've had for decades and decades. Inside most of those forks is a little component called a damper rod. It's a sort of a trumpet-shaped device. This is usually pretty crude in construction and manufacture. This is a component built to a price point. The damper rod will be typically drawn or stamped in some fashion. It's located in the bottom of your fork, so you can kind of see one installed in this fork. Below it is your top-out spring you may have heard of. That cushions your fork as it extends. And on top of that is your main fork spring that everybody's familiar with, and spacers. The way the oil moves through this, when the fork compresses, oil is forced through the holes in the bottom of the damper rod and flows up to the top. The simplest form of damping is a hole and pushing oil through a hole. And orifice dampening makes only one curve. It's a progressive curve. So it'll make little or no damping when you push oil through it slowly. It makes exponentially more damping the faster you push the oil through it. In and of that kind of comes the limitation of a damper rod. You would like your bike to have a firm, controlled feeling to it. And you'd like it not to dive when you pull the brake. You'd like stability from the bike. That would require a very small hole to make it feel firm. And so you can do that. You can make a damper rod with a small hole. The problem is then when you hit a bump, now we got to force oil through at a very high rate of speed. And it makes too much damping for it. Fork built in that way won't soak a bump, so it shocks you. The opposite is, oh yeah, I want to make my fork soak bumps. There's only one way. You got to make these holes really big. When you make them big, now it soaks bump. Now it's literally just a floaty pogo stick with no control and no feeling for the rider. It'll dive when you pull the brakes. We're looking for the best of both worlds. There is a way to do that with a little product called an emulator that's been around for many decades now. And it's kind of a little blow-off valve. The problem is installing that's not simple and requires drilling, deburring, sometimes brazing of certain holes in it. They may be told that it's easy, but it's not, and it ends up being a mess. So what we wanted to do for the Hugo Moto guys was come up with a drop-in kit that would be very simple for them, that you wouldn't have to do any work other than what you would have to do to change a fork seal. So Jason and Nico had asked us to have a couple different travels for their kits. Based on what they had studied in the marketplace, they looked for 9.5 and 11-inch rods. These in a Sportster fork will yield 140 millimeters of travel for a shorter travel bike, or standard travel let's call it, and then 175 millimeter for a longer travel. On top of that is going to be fitted the emulator, which is kind of a blow-off valve. What we do is we have giant holes in the rod that are bigger than you would ever have for any reason at all. This basically takes the rod out of the equation of creating compression damping. They place this valve on top. This one's a little larger than what you'll actually get. This is easier to see. This is a big one. So oil comes up to the bottom. Now there's a very small hole. The very small hole makes the fork feel firm, gives you that firm control we're looking for. This is a hole way smaller than we would ever put in a damper rod. But when you hit a bump, a whole hat opens and blows open. Now you have a hole, a giant hole that's way bigger than you would ever put in a damper rod as well. So that's how it soaks a bump. The spring keeps pressure on the hat. It feels firm. As soon as the oil velocity gets up very high, you've hit a bump, then the hat blows open, the spring opens. As soon as you're over the bump, the hat returns, now the bike's back to feeling firm. What's the advantage to our kit? Well, for the kind of the reasons I've just stated, if you were to buy a kit that was just a longer rod, it's just going to have fixed holes in it. It's never going to be optimum in any way. It's never going to feel firm and give you a controlled dive, and it's never going to soak a bump. The only way you can make a damper rod is to compromise on that. Medium-sized holes in it, and that gives you a medium level of performance, you're never going to be happy with this. We actually CNC machine a much higher quality rod. Surface of a stock rod is crude, wavy, might not be smooth even, and the tolerances on it are very loose and sloppy. With a CNC machined rod, we get a perfect rod made to within fractions of an inch, thousandths of an inch. The surface is really quite nice. And the holes are obviously CNC machined. Everything's perfect on it. It's extremely concentric round. Using a higher quality rod mated with the valve, we're able to provide a super high level of performance for you. In your kit, a pair of super high quality chrome silicone wire springs. These are guaranteed to hold their rate for the life of your motorcycle. They'll never sack out or change. A pair of our CNC machined rod. In the bottom, you may find some accessories and things depending on. You may want to order seals and bushings. Those are kind of options. But in the kit will come the spacers that you'll need. The valves and washers will be in the kit. Sort of appropriate oil for the model of bike, whether you're doing long travel or standard travel. Decals and such so you can apply to show pride in the nice components that you've installed in your bike. The guys and I have prepared a separate video to show you how to install all this stuff with a lot of detail, kind of pro tips along the way. But it definitely is as simple, no harder than installing the fork seal. Installing this kit will be very simple. When you talk to the guys at Hugo Moto, they'll also have a couple of little options. You can get seals and bushings if you need them, depending on the age and mileage on your bike, and also some simple hand tools that will facilitate making the job easier. We've put these kits into some forks. The guys have tested them. They're absolutely loving it. So we hope when you order a kit from Hugo Moto that you'll love the performance you get out of this kit as well.